Hello everyone and welcome to Golden Artist Colors. I'm Kevin Greeland and today we're going to take a look at doing printmaking or monoprinting with our open acrylics, and we'll be doing that on a gel plate. So we'll kind of go over the materials first and we'll show some examples. So if we switch to the overhead. So the first thing to note is that we're using our open acrylics, and open acrylics are designed to stay wet for a little bit longer, hence the open time. You have open time to work with them. So that's one important thing. The other thing we'll be working with is some stencils, and you can buy these stencils commercially or you can cut them out. So these are some examples that we cut out. And then the last most important thing you'll need is the gel plate. And so this is a synthetic gel plate. If you've done printmaking before, you can make these yourself from real gelatin. It's a little bit of work, but someone came up with this idea of a synthetic one, which makes it perfect for this process. And these are reusable. If you want some information or recipes about how to make your own, you can go on the internet and find lots of information about those. And you can also Google lots of different suppliers that make these gel plates. The gel plates come in a variety of sizes as well as shapes. So we're going to be working mostly with the 6x6. So this is an example of what we kind of refer to as a painterly print, where we paint directly onto the print. And you can see this, some different examples. These are on the 5x7 plate, and this one is on the 6x6 plate. And of course, if landscape or painterly is not your thing, you can work with stencils that you can buy commercially, or you can go abstract. And so these are some abstract prints that we made. And this was using a combination of painterly work, painting on the plate, which I'll show you, and using stencils. And as I said, open is ideal for this, but again, if you are on the internet and you're looking around, you'll see that there are lots of different possibilities. I like open because of the working time, but you'll see there are plenty of people doing lots of interesting things, both with heavy body paints, fluid, even high flow. One of the nice things about this is that the plate is relatively transparent, so if you're stuck for a lack of ideas, you can even put an image under there and paint from that. In terms of the paper that we're using, I like to use a smooth paper. But again, if you go online or go to any art store, you'll see there are lots of different options for printmaking paper. For this process, using the gel plate, I tend to go with a printmaking paper that's relatively smooth. All right, so let's clean this out of the way, and we'll set up to print. And I'll save these just in case we have questions later. So in terms of the plate, you'll want to put it on some surface that you can work with. And they're relatively flexible, but once they're kind of down, you can see they kind of stick in position. If I hold this up, you'll see it doesn't fall off of there. So they do have a tendency to stick. And in this case, you'll want to register the paper. And what I mean by that is, since we're going to be doing a couple of prints, we want to be able to keep that paper in a fixed position. So the way that I like to do that is I first mark my board where the plate will go, and then I like to use a low-tack, a low-tack tape so that you can peel that off. But essentially I'm just eyeballing, essentially I'm just eyeballing the paper. I'm kind of centering on the plate, and then I'll use some of this low-tack tape to secure that. Generally I kind of do it like a little hinge, 3 small pieces. Even though this is low-tack tape, you'll want to try and minimize how much is on the paper, because you do want to remove that. And some of the printmaking papers do tend to tear more easily than, say, some copy paper. Once I've done that outside hinge, just so it doesn't shift, I like to do 2 pieces on the inside. And I usually place those kind of opposite of where the 3 are on the outside. So by that I mean here I have these 3, and then on the inside I put the 2 here. So that paper is pretty well fixed. It's not going to move anywhere. And because our plate is sticking, we have it marked. And that allows us to move back and forth a couple of times. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with this case. I'm going to use a yellow. And we'll first start by doing kind of a layered process with both a handmade stencil and a commercial. The plates are relatively easy to clean up. The flushable or disposable wipes are great for that, or even soap and water. A soft brayer is ideal. Again, you can Google these and find lots of different options. This is a 6-inch one, the same size as the plate. Again, cleans up really well with just plain soap and water. So let's go ahead and roll this out. And you can see I didn't have to put a lot on there, maybe the little size of a bean. All right, you don't have to press real heavy. It's kind of just a gentle roll back and forth. All right, and then we're going to just take one, and because this is fixed to the plate, it will stay in position. I'll just give that a light rub. You can buy an item called the Hand Baron, which helps you rub, but I don't think that's necessary. Your hand works well. There's a little bit left on here, so we do this second print. I kind of like to refer to it as the ghost print because it helps clean off the plate. And so you can see that second one pulled off the remaining paint, and my plate is really almost, perfectly clean to where I started. If you really wanted to get fancy, you could also, register paper at the top and at the bottom, which would allow you, and then you can re-roll. But we're just going to work with 2. But there's so many options to this, it's really hard to go wrong. So now we're going to do a stencil. These come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and a number of different companies. Again, just pick one that you like. One thing to point out, I'm going to do red next. So when you're picking the colors, generally I like to work from light to dark. But within that range, there's also a difference between the same colors. So you can see this is our Quin Red, and it's very transparent because I can see those black lines through there. Where the Cadmium Red Dark is pretty dark, it's pretty opaque, it's concealing those black lines. So even within the colors, you get some variation. So it's important to kind of maybe think about those, or if you're just going for it, you can do that and see what happens. Again, about a bean size. We're going to roll this red out, and I'm rolling this right out on top of the stencil. Again, I don't have to press super heavy. Just roll back and forth a couple of different directions. And then you carefully have to remove that stencil. And then you have your pattern that's on there. Again, I'm just going to take my paper that I've registered. I'm going to give that a light rub. Again, you don't have to press real heavy because you don't want to squash the paint out. So there's that print, and then I'm going to do the ghost. Just again, a gentle rub. And pull that back. And again, you can see the plate's pretty clean. So the next step is we've done our hand cut stencils, and this is similar to this same process that are on these two, with the exception that instead of it being figures, we're doing birds. So, and how you place these is really up to you. Sometimes it's handy to have a palette knife, but a rounded one that will help lift that stencil off after the fact, or you can position it in such a way that just a little bit of that is the end of the stencil is there, so you can peel that up once it has the paint on it. And the nice thing about this is once the stencil's down, they stick again. Same idea, sticking to the surface. When you layer the colors, sometimes with the colors going on top of each other, there are pleasant surprises, and sometimes some don't work as well. So again, kind of pay attention to the color that you're choosing, which one's transparent and which one's opaque. I think for this I'm going to go with the opaque because I want to conceal most of the color that's underneath there. Again, a bean size amount of paint. And you'll take your brayer and you're just going to roll that out. And you just roll kind of all directions to help spread that out. That looks a little light, so I might put a little bit more on there. And this is our cobalt blue, one of my favorite colors.
Kevin, while you're rolling, do you mind if I ask you some questions from the chat?
Yes, questions, please.
So the hand-cut stencil that you have there, is that just regular paper, or was that a specific type of paper you used to make that?
You can use really any type of paper to make your stencils, even just plain copy paper. The problem with the copy paper is they're just kind of one-off because they'll tear. In this case, we're using Yupo, which is kind of a plastic type material and allows you to peel that off and use it a couple of times. So generally, something that's plastic, people have even used sheet protectors or Mylar. And they sell even squares of stencil material that you can buy from different stores. So you can see there's my stencil, and I'm just using the palette knife to kind of remove that. And these we hand cut. Just drew on them and hand cut them with an X-Acto knife, and they were with the white Yupo. You can buy it in transparent too, but I like the white because you can kind of see it. So you can see why it's important to have that palette knife or good fingernails to get those stencils up. And the nice part, you can see I got a little blue right there. If you look real close, might be so unnoticeable that it's not important, but one of the things I wanted to point out is Q-tips as well. So even just taking a damp Q-tip, you can wipe away the paint. So if you get paint somewhere that you don't like, you just go in that with a damp Q-tip and you can see the blue on the end of that Q-tip, and you can wipe away. So we're going to go ahead and print these now. And so there's your stencil with the people, and I'm going to do the ghost print on here. And the nice thing about this is once I've done this, if I decide for some reason I don't like this, I still have this one that I can work with. I could go back and put the stencils on and rearrange them, or even use a different color. And there's the ghost print. And again, with the ghost print, it's kind of nice because you've pretty much cleaned up your plate. Generally, I use disposable wipes, which are easy, and you don't have to worry about using lots of soap and water to clean the plate. Those disposable wipes are good also for removing paint from the brayer. When you store your plate, you want to keep these flat. Depending on your manufacturer that you order your plates from, follow their directions for cleaning, but they're relatively easy to maintain. So that's doing a layered print with the paper registered. And the examples of that, here's variations on that, a different blue. You can see with the blues, as I said, really with any color, some colors are more transparent and some are more opaque. This particular blue is more opaque, so it's canceled out the information that's under there, where this blue is a little more transparent. And you can see it's that layering color with the blue on top of the red gives us this violet tone, and here was where the stencil is. So a little more transparent and a little more opaque. All right, now for the painterly prints. It can kind of be the same process. So in this particular one, I think I started with Naples yellow. But to do this, it's the same idea. I have my plate. I've kind of marked my plate, and then I have my paper taped. I'll put a little red, yellow on there, excuse me. And I put a lot on there because I wanted to show you, when you do this, you see all this line and texture there. If you get that, that's kind of when you know you have a lot on there, and it's going to get squishy when you work with it. So you really only a small amount goes a very long way. Even rolling this out, you can see there's quite a bit on there. If that should happen, one of the things you can do is just do what we call like a drop print, and put that right on there, and just give a light rub again, and that will help remove that excess yellow, which you can save this then for collage, and you still have the print to work with. So let me go ahead and just even that out real quick. Again, I'm just going to do one side first. Peel that back, and then do what I call my ghost prints. And peel that back. In this case, because we put a lot down, there's still a little bit left on the plate. If you really wanted to clean that off, again, you could use a wipe, but it doesn't really bother me, so I'm just going to leave that. So painterly prints, if we look at this one, you can see the reason they're kind of referred to as painterly prints is because we're painting right on the plate. So a lot of that brushwork is visible. Of course, you can do this any number of different ways. Besides the brush, there are specific tools. They're called color shapers, and they're silicone or rubber, and you can go in there and make lines as well with those. As I said, Q-tips work, great for removing areas of paint. And you could even use the baby wipe itself or the disposable wipe to remove paint. And then found objects you can use to help remove paint. So in this case, with this one, you have to be a little bit careful. You don't want things that are too sharp. So that's why these color shapers are great, because they're very soft and flexible rubber. So let's demonstrate that. I'm going to use the Payne's Gray. It looks almost black there. I'm going to clean my brayer quickly.
So, Kevin, while you're cleaning up, we've had a couple comments in the chat about cleaning up dried paint, and that's one of the things that's really nice about using open for this process is the drying time for this paint.
Correct. So you don't have to worry too much about working with the open, because it's not going to really dry in your plate unless you leave it for, hours. But even then, depending on the type of plate you're using, we've experimented with a couple of different ones. It is possible to remove dried paint on your plates. So if you want to incorporate it into your art, one way would be to, when the paint is dry on this area, is to go back over it with a wet layer and then put your paper on and peel that off. And usually that removes both the wet layer and the dry layer, because that wet layer kind of bonds to the acrylic that's underneath there. A second one that we've tried is using clear moving or packing tape. You put that on your plate and you stick that in place and you peel that up, and it will also remove. If you don't want to worry about it in the art process, you can use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and then some dish soap to clean that up. All right, so let's do a couple of these just to show you what they look like. So this is the color shaper. So again, I can go in and I can start removing or making lines. This is that metal tool. A damp brush. I can wipe some paint away. And the wipe is the most subtractive. You can see I can almost clean that plate. And again, these will all give, you know, a different read. So they all give you a different sort of texture. Again, that wipe, you know, takes the most off. The metal gives you a cleaner line. The color shaper is a much softer line. The brush, you really retain those brush strokes. The nice thing too about kind of doing the painterly, as you change your mind, you can just clean your plate. And when I'm doing this, I don't really worry about cleaning the plate perfectly, so it really depends on your personality a little bit. We'll just put some CAD red down there. And I'm applying this directly to the plate, but if I wanted to, I could do a little color mixing on a piece of palette paper. So this is the red, and then we'll just add a little manganese blue hue to that. And you can see I can mix those together. And I can paint right onto the plate, or I can do the same with the paint that I put on there. And again, it's just a matter of printing. So really, you can go any number of directions. You can be as free as you want, be as completely abstract as you want, such as the ones that we did in here. You can be, you know, more painterly and do landscapes. You can see with these landscapes, just used a very damp brush to wipe a lot of that paint away to give that kind of sweeping sky. You could also use the baby wipe, color shapers to draw in the trees there, and then again layering with the stencils. Lots of different options. The thing that's key is using the open with the gel plate. So before we close, any other questions?
We have a materials and applications specialist who's in the chat answering questions. So many of these have already been addressed. Your gel plate, is that foam core that it's sitting on?
Yeah, so this is kind of just a hard foam core. I like these because they're easy to move around, and if you teach this as a class, it's a good tool. But you could use a piece of cardboard or really anything to put that gel plate on. The other thing, as I said, the printmaking paper. There are lots of different printmaking papers. I tend to prefer the ones that are real smooth, but certainly there are some with texture, and those just give you a more interesting and different effect. So it's really up to you about the paper choices. And a lot of people just use plain craft paper or copy paper or even tissue paper. Again, if you go online, you'll see there are literally hundreds of different examples of different ways to do this. So hopefully this will get you started. The key, paper, gel plate, and open. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, make sure you email us at help@goldenpaints, and we also have someone in the chat that will respond to your questions directly there. An article to look at on justpaint.org is, I think it's titled Monoprinting and Beyond, so give that a look. Thank you for joining, and tune in next time.